decision.
And the minutes reflect that, to say, okay, yeah, we're, on this particular project that you just talked about, there is board action that says, yes, Mr. Pettis, we want you to continue negotiating them, or no, Mr. Pettis, we want to wait on this one.
A lot of it is not a formal vote. It's in the presentation that I make to the board. Similar when we were out on the river park the other day, we were talking about, you know, the problems at the river park. And I think you yourself said, this may not require council approval. You know, if you said, okay, and I think the mayor was there too, Mr. City Manager, you know, this is something we can do it right now. We don't need to come back to the board, to the council for approval. I always present the information to the board if I need a formal approval. Expenditure of funds, you know, comes back to them, and then they tell me do it or don't do it. Okay. And prior to that, I try to give them as much information as possible before I ask for a decision whether we go forward or don't go forward.
And with that scenario, how can one council member say, I don't think you have to go to the council?
Well, the scenario you're driving there is one, or the story you told there about do you need council issue, and let's go ahead and clarify that. We were out at the river park. We had a recommendation from the San Antonio River Authority that said you should block off this area and prevent public access to it. And my comment was, very specifically, if we have a public safety threat, city manager does not need council approval to fence off the area. Do you agree, Ms. Mayor? And that was the discussion. My point here is I'm concerned that you as the executive director of the FEDC are presented with lots of proposals, okay, that we, and I am not questioning your judgment in any way, shape, or form. What I am questioning is, do we have board action that says, directs you as the executive director to continue working on this project or not continue working on a project as a potential project? You see where I'm going? It's a paper trail to protect you as well as the board members. To simply say, hey, we've discussed this is a great thing, but to say, yeah, we believe this is a good potential project, please flush it out some more, executive director. I think that needs to be documented by board direction.
That can be done. That's not a problem.
But at the same time, it is your responsibility to bring to the board as much information as you can.
Yes.
So that they can make a sound decision.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yes. And, you know, try to give them as much information, and as we go forward, they know what they're going to be voting on.
Exactly.
Right. But the other thing too, Mr. Miller, was the point about, do we need to hire an engineer to redo a study at the river park, you know, take care of some of the problems like the swales and all. And I thought I understood at that point that the city manager had the authority to spend those monies to hire an engineer to do that study without council approval.
Well, this was the discussion that we had out there. If we have a threat to public safety, okay, it is the city manager's responsibility to come to the council to say, we have this threat, this public safety threat. This is what it's going to cost to fix it, okay? Or these are the alternatives that are available. Not to simply come to the city council and say, hey, we've got this public threat, this threat to public safety. Do you want me to investigate the costs of fixing it? That's his job as the city manager. The discussion that we had out there was, Madam Mayor, do you believe that it takes council action for the city manager to determine the cost of fixing a threat to public safety? And the agreement out there was no.
Wait a minute, you're saying that they asked me that?
No, you and I discussed this out there. I asked that question. Do we need council approval to determine the cost of it? What it's going to take to fix a threat to public safety? You know, to simply say, yeah, we have a threat. Do we have a responsibility as a council to fix it? Absolutely. by no means were we saying get an engineering study to build ball fields, or get an engineering study to do things that are aesthetically safe, aesthetically acceptable. What was discussed out there was, we had an estimate, these were the numbers that you gave me, that was 3 to 5 years old. What was it going to take to get current costs to stop the threat to public safety? And it was an extension of that engineering step, okay? To which I said, let's do it.
Right.
We have to fix the threats to public safety. That's one of the priorities of a city. And that is one of the jobs of the city manager, is to inform the council what it's going to take to fix something. That was the discussion out there, not a optional issue. When it comes to public safety, it's mandatory to do.
Right.
I just stood up in case I had any questions on the city manager works for the council, the entire council. No one council member has ever directed me to take any action whatsoever, and even if they do, I politely advise them, you know, I work for the council, not for each individual council member. I do have my duties that are daily duties, that I don't come to the council member for the council for approvals, because the budget guides me, the direction of the council and their wishes guide me, and that's where I go. For the media, the report that we got from the San Antonio River Authority was a recommendation to close up the park. Not an order, not anything else other than, it's our recommendation that you keep people out of that back area.
Right.
For
We did.
public safety.
For public safety, but not an order. It was a recommendation.
Agreed.
And the city staff, Parks Department took care of that. And now we'll move forward on, after tomorrow's meeting, to see what direction you want to head, and we'll discuss that further. Anything, as we know, state law requires any kind of services over 50,000 require proposals, bids, everything else on that respect. The city charter says 25. We've come to areas where, you know, do we follow the 25 or do we follow the $50,000 city charter? And that all depends on the council. The city manager's reporting to the council on a monthly basis is for that purpose, to let you know this is what's going on, this is what we're doing, this is what we're faced with, and this is where we're headed. So
I think the whole discussion, the whole point about this discussion is, you have responsibilities where you collect data and you have to make decisions on a daily basis for the welfare of the city. The same thing for the colonel. He's got to collect as much information as he can before he brings it to the board.
and that's correct.
And that's all, I think that's the only thing we're trying to
Sure.
settle here.
And that's one thing that, that as a new council member and as a new mayor, I appreciate, you know, them coming in to say, you know, this is what's going on or what, if they want to. You know, I know the 3 other council members do that occasionally, but say, you know, I've heard this or I heard that, and I'll clear it up and we're over and done. I don't have a problem with that. One of the issues that we have to understand, and I believe the mayor had a feel of one day of me dragging her around from meeting to meeting or this or that. Our jobs are intense and they take up the majority of the time. The only thing we ask is the council, yes, we do get as much information. We have people coming in daily and say, I've got this going, or I'm thinking about this, or I'd like to bring this business. You know, does it fit with what you're doing? Do you think this or that? And yes, no other action other than that. If it materializes to the point of what we've discussed, a huge property, of course, the board is going to approve that, is going to get a briefing on that. And even then, when the board approves it, it has to come to the council. It has to come to the council for that approval. And we move forward. But my job as his is executive director, my job is the same thing, city manager, executive director. You know, we deal with those on a constant basis, and we have a lot of them that don't ever move from first base to second. But once it gets to that point.
Again,
Sure.
I wasn't questioning
I know.
the actions of the colonel. My concern, and I reiterated, was do we have the trail
Sure.
to say that his board gave him the direction to continue with a potential project or not. And not the colonel making the decision,
Exactly.
or not the city manager making the decision, this is a potential project or not. All I was clarifying was, do we have the trail that says the board or the council gave you the direction to pursue this project, even as a potential? And that was the point. By no means, Councilwoman Castillo, am I questioning anybody asking or acquiring information. My intentions were to protect you.
And the short answer to that could have been just yes. And we would have been done with it, but those things are good. Those are good discussions that we've had. And I'm going to tell you, just real quick, on my participation with the economic development has never been to micromanage the colonel in any way, the executive director, Jesse. We work very well together, and we undertake projects together to present to his board, to the council. I could stay away from his side of the city hall and maintain mine, but as we're going to do tomorrow, we'll never see the big picture. And that's my goal and everything, to say, how does this fit in the big picture? I'm sorry.
And I talk to the city manager on a daily basis. And again, my office is always open. Mr. Morones, constantly stops in, Ms. Castillo, Mr. Guerrero, and I, the new mayor and our newest council member. It's always open, and I'm always ready to talk, and show you what we have, give you a tour of what we're doing, and take you out to the different things that we're working on, So that's available, and I'm not light-skinned, and I can take criticism. 27 years in the Army, you got to be tough, So Jim knows this, working for the military. But anyway, to continue, then across the highway, and I think y'all hadn't come in yet with McCoy property. I think you're going to approve the plat coming up this meeting, or
They're
soon to
coming on
be.
Thursday.
But that property finally closed. The agreement was made then, approved by the board, approved by the council. But we have to do an interlocal agreement with the McCoys that they're going to do certain things, we're going to do certain things. From the FAC standpoint, we committed to paying, I think, no more than $123,000 to extend the sewer lines across the highway to the property, which is the old Witten property, or part of the Witten property. And from what we understand, that's going to start sometime in January, hopefully be completed late spring, early summer. But the plans are already in, and I know Cindy's got the plans and is working on that. So from our standpoint, that makes it a little easier. Their engineers will take care of all the work. Cindy and her crew, and also the city engineer, will oversee all the work that's being done by them. By moving across the highway, then, we bring in McCoy, but also they have some retail pads that they're going to make available. They're also talking to some restaurants, and if not restaurants, in some other type of retail in the property. One of the things that they did offer us was, I think, 9 acres, if I'm not mistaken, Andy,
I believe so.
along the Seguin branch that we can use for parks, and they will organize that land. They will work it, rough cut it, and level it out for us. And on that property, we probably could make maybe 1 or 2 good soccer fields, either for practice or for regular play. But they're available there. We're going to take the high ground, keep it out the flood zone area, and then that property can be used for that. Accessible through the main entrance off of 181, and also from the back side on 301, I think is the name of the road. Moving south,